Catus, Maximus here, this time with a review of the PT Performance Tool by Wilmar FirePointX stick light. They're advertising this as a 600 lumen lithium-ion rechargeable work light. I'll actually put up, it uses red and of course modern blue. At least you can tell when it's charged, although this thing did take forever to charge through its little micro USB port. Not a very good cover. This is a cheap light, about 18 bucks. And actually right here and here I'll put just some pictures of the red and blue LEDs so you can see them. It does have a magnetic swivel base. It is advertised for 2.5 hours of illumination time. It has a little metal clip at the top, kind of flimsy, but being only 18 bucks, which is half the price, the Harbor Freight Braun 400 lumen stick light normal retail price now is $40. They're getting pretty expensive on those. So this thing for half the price I think is okay, and we'll take a look inside to see what kind of battery and what capacity. They did do something unique, which could be it could be a positive and a negative. So the positive is that it's a variable, continuously variable work light. So very rare. Very few manufacturers will do that where they'll have a potentiometer. Although it does make me think inside that there isn't a voltage regulation circuit. Something like this Braun will maintain relatively constant output. It'll maintain its full brightness until the battery gets near dying, and then it'll just start cutting out because it has a constant current circuit. This being the nature of a potentiometer, I think it's much more simple, and it's just the battery's directly connected to the LED strip, and then there's just a simple charging circuit to make it convenient for them to run this little variable speed dial. This dial is pretty easy to turn, but I could see just how big it is and how it protrudes, that you could be constantly bumping it when you're working with it, but it may not be such a big deal because it doesn't adjust the brightness too much. What I do like is that you can go way down to essentially a camping light or reading light level. And where it makes a difference is there's a little bit better focus because all the LED elements here are individual LED bulbs, or the ones in the Braun are a cob style. When we turn it on here, it's kind of hard to see, but all the LEDs are just little elements integrated to what would be a large strip. So this has a wider or more of a flood, as well as having one on the stick. Now this, well, let's do this first. We'll turn on the Harbor Freight on bright, and then we'll start in with the PT. The PT is pretty good. We can see that we hardly notice a difference when we turn on the Harbor Freight, but if we turn off the PT, pretty surprising. Now for twice the money, you get a nice billet unit here with a nice articulating head that both swivels and angles. It does have some minor detents, so as well as friction, so it stays in place. A magnet on the bottom so you can attach it to something and aim this however you want. This is pretty limited where it just has the swivel, but it is a cheaper unit. Actually, let's go outside and do a little light test. Here we are with the Harbor Freight. And then if we turn on the PT tool here, we can see that there's just quite a bit more concentrated beam. There's the Harbor Freight, and then as soon as we bring in the PT, you can really see it. It's just a much brighter light. If we get it closer to the wall, we can just see the difference. The Harbor Freight's quite a bit more flood. I think I had the video zoomed in a little too much when I was doing that lighting test. But you're still able to get the point where this has a bit more flood, so not only is it a few less lumens, it's casting over a wider area. So in many situations that might be nice, but in this situation, not only do you have a brighter light, it's just a little bit more of a constrained flood, and so actually I don't mind it. I actually kind of like this light considering what price it is. Now I've already disassembled this or taken apart the Harbor Freight. Since these both advertise 2.5 hours of runtime, as I was saying earlier, I think it's because the performance tool slowly dies and you may actually get more of a true continuous output. But we can see in the Harbor Freight it has a no-name 2200 milliamp hour. This is a protected cell in these Brauns, just for anybody who may be curious about that. So let's take apart this PT. And I should mention that they did spend a bit of money on the packaging on this unit, that's for sure. We have a bunch of little screws, and then this Catus unthreads, and that's kind of what holds the magnet in, and it kind of just pops in there like that. And then we can pull out the 9 little screws. As a note, these 4 upper screws are special short ones, and then these 5 lower ones are a little bit longer. And we'll just pop it off like so. Super simple. So it is a little bit cheap. One thing I was noticing, there is a heatsink for the back of the LEDs, but if we pull it up, it doesn't even have any thermal compound on it, and it just presses onto the back of it through the case. So at least they have a heatsink there, but it's pretty lightweight. We have our battery, and what's interesting about this in the Harbor Freight, if we can, I don't know if the camera can pick it up. Maybe you can just see under there, right there, 2200 milliamp hours. So the same capacity battery as the Harbor Freight. And I'm going to try to work up this charging board. So I was wrong. There is a fairly complicated control and charging board right there that you can see, and the potentiometer is these wires, and it goes into the board and actually goes through some of the electronics before it goes out to the LED, so it may actually be regulated. I also wanted to mention that isn't just like a tiny potentiometer and a radio. It's actually a fairly large and tall, substantial one, so it is good to see that. That's a nice part right there. Otherwise, there's just not a ton to these devices. So overall, for the price, it's kind of nice. You know, work lights these days, for less than 20 bucks, you actually get something that's rechargeable and more than bright enough to, easily as bright or a lot brighter than the old fluorescents that would have taken up the same amount of space. And I think that's pretty cool. And as far as this for less than 20 bucks, I think most people will get most of their life out of it, even if it isn't very, as durable. Obviously, if you have this stacked on some tools and you get up or step on it, it is going to break. But it's kind of nice because you don't feel so bad about it, and more than likely, most people will kind of get their money out of it. Even though that Harbor Freight Braun is really nice, it is pretty expensive too. When it comes to work lights, they generally kind of get beat up anyway, so it's always kind of a disappointment to beat up a nice work light when there's this one. And the other nice option is that you can order off of Amazon those type of lithium-ion cells that have wires already integrated into them. You want to, and I didn't check, but I believe that this is a unregulated or unprotected cell, although I may be wrong. When you slice off the packaging, you'll see a little circuit board on top of the lithium-ion cell to tell if it's protected, or if it's relying on the circuit that's inside here. But it's nice to see that you can upgrade, and the highest it seems is about 3600 milliamp hours. Anything beyond that's like knockoffs or rip-offs or fakes. But as far as Samsung and LG and Panasonic, you can go up to 3600. So you could even increase the battery capacity of this or the Braun by another 50%. Then they'd have really good light times. The one thing I will mention is, even though it has 2.5 hours, which is pretty good, I think they are pushing the lumens a little bit too much in sacrifice of work time, because it really does seem like a couple hours, if you have kind of a frustrating job working on suspension or whatever that you're doing, that could easily be cumbersome. And that may be where the Braun has a slight advantage, because you can just order some more of those protected cells, and if the battery dies, you can just swap it out, even though it's a lithium ion, and just be able to continue using the light. Where in this case, as soon as it dies, you're stuck with its super slow charging. That's probably the worst part about this. It's like a 4-hour charge. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.